So we are exploring acceptance as a concept, and I have prepared a table or a diagram, which I'm hoping will make it really helpful and clear for you. So I think, so often when I have tried to explain acceptance, and perhaps in the early days when acceptance was being explained to me, I really interpreted it as giving up and just kind of being lazy. And then I realized that actually acceptance sits at the midpoint between giving up or giving in and striving. And those two extremes felt really natural for me. The giving up is like, well, it's too hard, I'm not going to do it, or the clinging and striving, push, push, push until the point where I'm exhausted. So acceptance, I just think it's so powerful to see it sitting somewhere in between. So if we go through each of these areas, we can see, if we start with the giving up one, it's that sense that, dropping our standards or living outside our values, kind of just saying, well, I don't care, it's not important anyway. It could also be described as learned helplessness, which is a psychological concept where we just assume that we can't do anything, we can't respond. And that can happen for various reasons, for many of us, really. Others may describe this tendency as lazy or complacent, and the typical emotion associated with that state is depression or feeling flat. And if we look at it from a nervous system perspective, that is when we get into the dorsal vagal shutdown. So it's that real kind of freeze response, which a lot of people spend a lot of time in. And then if we flick to the other side, which is the striving part, that clinging or kind of being in denial with reality, that's where we can tend to wish things were different. We don't tend to be content or peaceful. We tend to be frustrated. Others may describe this as driven. Not that that's a negative thing, but maybe if I added an additional word there, it might be overly driven or too driven or clinging. The typical emotions associated with this state are frustration and anxiety, which is really, interestingly, the other side of the nervous system, the fight-flight side. So the sympathetic side of the nervous system being just on too often. And so I love this approach where we can look at acceptance as kind of being somewhere in between the two. It's really about acknowledging looking at what is actually happening, which in its essence is what mindfulness is. It's waking up and embracing life. And so that then allows us to respond with insight and skill. We can look at what's really there and respond wisely and kindly. And others may describe this as a chilled out or a realistic approach. And the typical emotion associated with this state is likely contentment, because we stop going into battle with life. We start to accept what is actually happening. And it's important to, I think, be clear that we're not saying that acceptance is assuming things are acceptable. We can still say, well, that's not acceptable and I want it to change, but it is what it is. And if we accept the reality, it puts us in a wiser and more powerful place to respond to what is actually happening. And so in a moment, we'll do a meditation to explore this idea, because, as you know, we can talk and talk and talk, but really it's the practice that can help us learn most powerfully. So I will stop sharing for now, and I will pause the recording. So welcome back. We are going to practice together now. My favorite part of this work. So you might choose a way to position the body. And when we sit down to practice, it's always that constant balance between sitting with integrity and dignity, but also a sense of peace and ease. So as opposed to slumping over and, being kind of lazy or being too rigid, it's sitting somewhere in between those two extremes. the sitting with integrity and agency, allowing the back to be strong but not rigid, allowing the shoulder blades to roll down the back easefully, allowing the neck to be balanced, the head sitting beautifully at the top. The palms placed either face up if you're feeling like you might like to receive a bit more energy, or face down if you feel like you might enjoy a little more groundedness and settling, just on the lap or the knees, or in a mudra of your choice, of course. And once you've chosen the position consciously, mindfully, my invitation is just to start from the very beginning, accepting that this is the position you have chosen. So I think so often, even in the way we come to practice, there's that little internal voice. I should be sitting differently. I could be sitting better. And instead we accept, just for the next few minutes, this is the way we've chosen to position the body. And if discomfort comes, which it can when we choose to sit for a bit longer, can we see this discomfort with clear eyes, with just as a sensation? Can we accept that it's there? Bring curiosity to that sensation and notice how the sensation changes. And if, of course, we need to move, we can, but let's do that really consciously. And so just sensing and feeling into the landscape of this body. Perhaps noticing any areas of obvious tension. Noticing any areas of obvious ease. And now, without changing or fixing anything, just noticing the fact that there's breath moving through the body. And just bringing our own warm and curious attention to this flow of the breath. Letting go of any desire that it were different, that striving part of us. And just accepting the breath exactly as we find it. And infusing that acceptance with real kindness, with real curiosity. all the while noticing the antics of the mind. So it's possible that during the times when I'm quieter, the mind fills that space with stories of the past or the future, or judgments of the present moment. That's all okay. The job of the mind is to think, in much the same way as the job of the ears is to hear or the eyes to see. The mind is simply secreting thoughts. And instead of going into battle with them, instead of fighting them, we can just accept that they're there. Ah, there's thinking. And we gently and kindly and with great curiosity, we just come back to observing the breath. Knowing that if the mind wanders from the breath into thinking 1,000 times, we simply bring it back 1,000 times, accepting that these are the habits we may have created for ourselves. But right now, in this moment of formal practice, we get to undo those habits. What a gift. What an opportunity to create a different way. And so we just ride the breath as it is, as we find it. We're with ourselves as we are, as we find ourselves. And if for whatever reason the breath does not feel comfortable or available today, you might like to choose one part of the body to focus the attention. It might be the point between the brows, or perhaps the point where the sit bones and the couch or the cushion or the chair meet. Or maybe the point where the feet and the floor meet. Just with this breath, or just with this point in the body. Just this breath, just this point in the body. Lovingly, kindly, patiently, caressing the attention and bringing it back back to now, back to the present moment, back to the unfolding of your life. And at this stage of the practice, you're welcome to stay with the breath or the point in the body. Or if you'd prefer to, you're welcome to allow the attention to be broad and expansive, to be inclusive, and to simply observe the unfolding of each moment. Without needing to bring the attention into one spot in the breath or the body. It's almost as if we rest behind or beyond the present moment. We rest within awareness itself. And at some point in the practice, we might even start to notice that we are part of something much bigger than our breath, much bigger than our body, much bigger than the colorful thoughts in our mind. We rest there. Accepting our own expansiveness, our own power, our own wisdom, our own consciousness, our own beauty, our own peace, our own love. In our life, we can be so quick to accept the painful or difficult, but equally, can we also cultivate the capacity to accept the pleasant and beautiful? We can practice this in our meditation. And as we continue to practice, we might just note the positioning in the body. Are we still sitting with integrity, with sovereignty, with agency and dignity? These characteristics that are actually our birthright. This practice draws to a close. Might take a moment just to gather the attention back into this incredible vehicle of the body. This effortless flow of the breath. Perhaps just taking a moment to place your own warm hand on your heart. As a sign of care, respect, acceptance for yourself. You might just take a moment to reflect and consider what you can take with you out of this meditation. What kind of insights, observations, learnings about your inner world or the outer world. Because remember, we don't meditate to become good at meditation. We meditate so we can show up more authentically, with more passion and clarity, wisdom and skill, kindness and acceptance in our own life for ourselves and the people we are sharing this journey with. And then with one final long deep breath, just letting the hands come back to the lap or place on the knees. And just letting the eyes blink back open.